Sure. Well, welcome, folks. Happy Friday. Good morning if you're on the West Coast or maybe on Mountain Time. You're starting to near the afternoon if you're in other parts of the country or maybe other parts of the world. We are really thrilled to have you here today. We are, again, like Shannon mentioned, going to talk a little bit about what this program is all about, but probably more importantly, why we've created this program and ultimately what we're hoping to support people with as it relates to dealing with nonprofit layoffs.
All
Turn it
right. I think this is also, oh, this is me. I'm sorry.
to
So, as many of you are dropping in the chat, you are facing layoffs right now in your organizations. We know that we've had a couple seismic changes in our sector. The changes in government funding, losing basically our largest funder for the nonprofit sector, the government, right? Plus with changes in AI and just kind of budgets just really getting constricted. Layoffs are just a part of our reality right now. But we really believe that the hard decisions can be human-centered and that to be honest, a lot of organizations are spending a lot of time talking to their lawyers, but the lawyers aren't going to help you take care of your people and protect your reputation and continue on as an organization that is effective and continuing on their mission, right? Because there's a lot of grief and loss that comes in layoffs and survivor's guilt for the people that stay. So, we really want to help create a space where we can help people move through the hard spaces of the human-centered work so that nonprofits can emerge even stronger from layoffs and motivated and passionate to continue the work that we believe in that is so vital to our sector. So today we're going to go through a preview of the program. We're going to give you some information to share with your team so you feel prepared for, how to pitch this, any responses they might have, and of course, juicy Q&A, which, there's a lot of hot topics in this. And that is why we are here to do this work.
And before we get into the fine details of the program and the supports that you might want to take back to your organization, we want you to get an understanding of who we are and, again, why we're doing this. So I'm going to introduce Shannon. Shannon is the founder of Monsoon Leadership. It's really cool to be able to take both of our individual brands and come together and bring something to this world, bring something to this market that is really a beautiful representation of not just who we are, but what we are passionate about in the sector. So Shannon founded Monsoon Leadership. Even outside of the business that she runs, she's got over 20 years in the nonprofit sector. And very uniquely, Shannon is a former, that's a key word, and I'll let her tell us that story a little bit, a former C-suite leader with development and communications experience within Monsoon Leadership. She is your go-to gal. If you're looking for career support, career advancement, looking for a job, she is really like top tier, one of the best out there when it comes to that work.
And Loretta, who I love partnering with, is a well-being strategist. So she really works on the hard issues with organizations through Do Good Leadership and her personal consulting. Over 15 years in the nonprofit sector, supporting leaders and teams, navigating transitions, creating cultures of well-being for real, not just talking about self-care, but how do you embed well-being into the actual structure and the DNA of your organization? And really specializes in that well-being coaching and organizational care. And I love that term, organizational care, because we are individuals and we're also a collective at an organization. And layoffs are kind of a trauma on the organization. So how do we take care of the individuals and the organization at the same time? And we were really inspired to create this program because we realized we were having very similar conversations with different nonprofit leaders and people who were being laid off and people who were remaining. And there was a lot of residual trauma happening. And how could we bring our expertise together to be able to do that? And as Loretta said, I am also recently laid off. There has been a string of chief development officers being laid off right now. And so I'm talking with many who have gone through what I've gone through. And I truly believe that there is a way that you can do it that doesn't cause so much harm. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, perfect. So we want to talk a little bit about data. I love data. I love trends. For all of us that are in the nonprofit sector, we oftentimes know too that the best way to get something supported, the best way to make a case and to get something funded is to show those receipts. So here are ultimately, honestly, not the best receipts or the most fun receipts I've ever seen, but this is the data that's coming from the Chronicle of Philanthropy. We'll send you the slide deck so that you'll be able to actually access that link under the Chronicle of Philanthropy so that you can go look at this a little bit more. But they have a monthly layoff tracker that they've been keeping a pulse on since January, well, since Inauguration Day, ultimately. And, you know, the proof is in the pudding, y'all. The layoffs have been immense in our sector, and there are more to come. Okay, been immense, and there's more to come. So we're keeping a close eye on this data shared by the Chronicle of Philanthropy. What I also appreciate about what they're breaking down here is helping us get an understanding of which subsectors within the nonprofit sector are most impacted. And, you know, I know there's plenty of qualitative real life data out there around what's happening with layoffs. I quite literally haven't even told Shannon this, but I woke up to a wall of text from a layoff that happened in my hood, which is San Diego. And I actually used to work at this organization. And so I woke up to a wall of text from people that are not going to believe it. They just let all of us go. Can you step in? Do you have any resources? Like, give us a hand, right? So there's plenty of qualitative data out there. I'm sure all the stories that you're hearing, but it's also really helpful to know that one of our leading entities in the sector is keeping a close pulse on this and in real time updating us about what that's actually going to mean and the implications that it's going to have in our sector for the long haul. But anyways, let me get off my nerdy data box. What we know to be true, let's go back one for a second. What we know to be true is that these layoffs are happening. There's more to come. And the layoffs are the implications, or the reason the layoffs are happening is because there's been sudden budget cuts, right? Some of them because of the loss of federal funding.
And state funding, I would say. So it's a double whammy right now.
Yeah, and state funding and organizations feeling like major losses to the budget or big losses to the budget are just not a risk they're willing to take. And the first thing that comes to mind is let's cut personnel. And so I say that as a note as well, that what we're seeing is leaders are reacting to these budget cuts and are immediately like, all right, we just got to get rid of these people. And that leads to a lot of overwhelm. It leads to a lot of confusion. It leads to a lot of isolation and broken trust, not just for the people that are getting the news that they're being laid off, but also for the people who have to make this choice. And as a result of that, the staff are left with a lot of unresolved feelings. That includes grief, that includes fear, that includes survivor's guilt, like Shannon mentioned, for the people that have to stay. They then have to carry a lot of emotionality and figure out how they're going to continue to do their job and maybe other people's jobs now that 10, 20, 30% of the staff just got cut. And as a result of all of that, right, because this is a huge trickle-down effect, team morale and trust are often shattered, damaged, and in a lot of cases that I'm seeing in organizations, it's irreversible.
Right. And so then you have a wave of staff leaving. So, you know, we see organizations shrinking down, but, you know, with increased workloads. So all of the staff that remain have the increased workloads and the broken trust, and then they're already looking for their next job because it's irreversible of the broken trust. So how do we help organizations do the layoffs in a way that retains trust, supports the staff who stay so the work can continue? Without just having this mass exodus happening everywhere. And so that actually no mission-driven work is happening because there's just so much staff turnover.
And if you're following Shannon or I on LinkedIn, which I highly recommend because we talk about a lot of good stuff, we share a lot of good resources. We are frequently telling the stories, the horror stories that we're hearing, again, quite literally in our inboxes, the phone calls we're getting, the LinkedIn messages we're getting a lot of these stories about the grief, the fear, the anger, the isolation, the overwhelm. But there is a bright spot in this. We'll go to the next slide. There is a bright spot that it doesn't have to be this way. And the reason we know that it doesn't have to be this way is because I would say probably 1 in 10 messages I get tells a different story about how layoffs have been done, tells a different story about how layoffs don't have to break people. They don't have to break people and how they can be handled with integrity and care. I've had a handful of people that reach out to me and say, I'm so grateful that this program exists because I feel like I'm the only one in my region. I'm part of an organization that is the only in our region that is actually taking intentional steps to lay off people with compassion. We
Mhm.
trust that organizations don't want to make this process really difficult. We trust that organizations do want to do better. But what we're seeing, again, in these trends is that folks are scared. And
Mhm.
people really need some guidance. They really need a roadmap, and they need some trusted folks to walk them through it, knowing that it's going to be icky, it's going to suck, it's going to be difficult. But again, it doesn't have to result in a lot of these horror stories that we're hearing.
So what is this that we've created? So we've talked a lot about the issues at hand, and we have developed this very innovative curriculum to really help both the leaders who are making the decisions, handle them with care, and then also for the staff who stay and the staff who are being let go. So we have this multi-stage process. We have board and executive training. This is where we start. So this is ideally before the layoffs have happened. So this is as soon as you get that red flag that we're going to have to make cuts, call us, bring us in. We have a 2-hour training where we talk through how to plan this out with care. What are actual tangible gifts that you can give staff on the way out? There are simple, small things that help people feel honored and cared for and not disappeared in the middle of the night that you can do, bringing some rituals, some good communication, instead of just everything happening under this blanket of silence, which is very harmful to both the staff who leave and the staff who remain. So really helping leaders plan the right way. We also provide leadership coaching, one-on-one coaching for all the staff who are making these decisions and the staff who actually have to do the layoffs, and board members who are, sometimes the board members are leading a lot of this too. So any of those, providing that one-on-one leadership coaching, because it's also a traumatic experience for the leaders too. I know Loretta was talking with an executive director, is like, I just came on a year ago, built all this trust with the staff, and now I have to do this. How do I do that? We want to support leaders and how to do this the right way, right? Because we also want to retain leaders in the field. And, the headlines are rolling in. If it's not handled well, leaders are being pushed out and they're going to have a really hard time getting another leadership position. So how can we help leaders do the right thing, take care of themselves, and take care of their staff along the way? And then we have the organizational workshops. So those are specifically designed for the two groups. So for the staff that are let go, how to manage those emotions, not holding on to the shame and the fear of what's to come, and also helping them jumpstart their job search. So actually giving them tangible tools on how to get going on their job search, how to tell the story of being laid off, how to prepare for interviews and position themselves for their next job. And then also workshops for the staff who remain. How do they create a new team culture? How do they move through survivor's guilt? How do they, basically create a new way to work together? Because they have, teams are being dismantled and workloads are increasing. So how do we help them work through that? We also have extra add-ons if you need additional support of technical assistance coaching, kind of resilience circles, and specifics on, gifts you can give out on the way out. So the way this works is you can either purchase things a la carte, so like the trainings and such, or we have a comprehensive package, which we would want to work with you on what that looks like based on your specific situation.
Thanks, Shannon. And we want to talk a little bit about who this is for. I really appreciate some of the examples that Shannon gave of what it looks like in real time. And I think what's important to recognize with the offerings that we have here is that it isn't and doesn't need to be exclusively for all the decision makers.
Mm-hmm.
We're going through the comprehensive package. We do start with the decision makers because, quite frankly, that's where we're seeing a lot of the harm happen, right?
Yeah.
Getting a little bit on my nonprofit soapbox. Give me a second. We're seeing a lot of these boards who perhaps don't have a ton of nonprofit lived experience, but they've got a good lawyer. And they're quick to they're quick to react. They're quick to make decisions that don't quite honor the culture and the needs of the people who are in the organization. So that is where we start. We start with the board, and we of course start with the executive director and the executive team, who are, again, the decision makers, and helping them like get a real clear understanding of what they actually can do to make this a more kind, a more compassionate, a more easeful process. And perhaps that's where you stay, right? Perhaps you just want your board to be talked with, perhaps you want your executive team to be talked with, and that can perhaps will be plenty for you to help make these decisions in a more compassionate way. But we also want to extend, again, the leadership coaching to executive staff or any other decision makers who, quite frankly, just need to be held in private, confidential conversation of, oh my God, what the hell is going on? I don't know how to feel. This is so overwhelming. Can you please just please help me move through all these emotions, right? So that's why we offer the leadership coaching. So folks have, again, a confidential, a private, and helpful space to really express what they're feeling and then figure out how to use those emotions to still make the best decision. And then finally, of course, going back to what Shannon mentioned about the workshops, we don't want this to live in complete secrecy with those that have decision-making power. Again, that's where a lot of the harm has. So we're going to work with your board, we're going to work with your executives to then figure out what is the best way to share this with the rest of your staff so that you are staying, legally aligned, but also you're doing the transparent thing that actually lets folks in a meaningful way without disclosing too much information and causing chaos. So again, this is really a program for everyone. It does start at the top because we're trying to mitigate harm at the top, but the idea is to get this information out to everyone in the organization and also constituents of the organization, your donors, the people you serve, right? That communications piece on how you talk about the layoffs externally is a huge part of this program. And so again, we have it bullet pointed here, but this program is for everyone. And we want everyone to feel like they are a part of this transition in a way that feels meaningful and in a way that feels like they're not going to be left in the dark.
I love that. Yeah. And so the time commitment does vary. So we can do things kind of one off, or we can do the comprehensive. Obviously, we recommend the comprehensive, right? So if you really want to do things with intention and care, you want to have us there the whole time. So most organizations will engage in a 1 to 3 month package, but we tailor the scope based on your organization size and needs. We understand that these are very unique situations. Sometimes layoffs are done in phases. So how do you handle the first phase so the next phase doesn't, compound on the trauma, right? So we want to work with people on that as well. So the board and executive training is a 2-hour training. That's ready to go. You can buy that at any time and we can come in and work with your team. We, also if you have already done layoffs and you want us to come in and work with your board and executive team, we can modify that if you're mid-process, but we do recommend that it is before you start, right? So you have the plan in mind before you start communicating with staff. And then the workshops for staff are also 2 hours, and those can be purchased one-off. So if you've already done layoffs and you want to support the staff who have remained, you can call us in right now and we can start to work with them on how to heal from that grief and also learn how to work differently with a smaller team. So, you can't achieve all those goals you had when you had twice as many staff, right? So how do you work together to augment the work plans and learn how to work across teams when you're missing key players, right? Everything changes. So how do we help build a new way to work together? So that can be anytime. We only have a couple spots for the full process engagements for Q3. So we only have 2 spots. So if you are interested in the full engagement, I would recommend talking with us sooner rather than later because we do have a limit on that. All right.
And that tees up perfectly to talk about what's next, which is figuring out how you want to get in touch or stay involved with this conversation. So like Shannon mentioned, if you're considering layoffs or you've already been through them or you're in the middle of them, there's a way that we can help in one way or another. The next steps to kick that process off is we're going to encourage you to submit an inquiry. We'll send that into the chat in a moment. It's right through the main website. You just put in your details, give us an idea of what you're trying to get support with, and then we'll be in touch ASAP. You can also share this information with your board and your leadership team. Like we said, we're recording this, so we'll be able to share this out with you in case there's someone in the organization that you want to watch this or someone you need to sit down and talk about this with and get some ideas of how you might want to implement this into the next few months. Or if you're ready and you know that you've got a board or an executive team or staff that need a chat or need some support, you can get on our calendar right away and get something set up for the quarter ends, before the summer ends, or get something set up for the fall, right as we get into the second half of the year and the second half of the nonprofit year, which can be really, really, really hectic for folks as we're, trying to wrap up programs and get to the holidays. So Q&A.
Yes, so now I'm going to actually stop the recording so we can have a private Q&A, and we do have the QR code here for the interest form, which we will also share out the slides.